Ian Evatt is in trouble at Bolton. Steve Bruce wins his first game at Blackpool, and Leyton Orient finally clinched their first victory of the season. Welcome to this week's League One Lowdown Review episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the League One Lowdown from the Deck Podcast Network. I'm Seb Jones, joined as ever by Jamie Johnson. Jamie, how are you doing, buddy?
Hello, yeah, I'm not too bad. I don't think, not quite as good as you, just coming back off holiday. You've got a bit of a tan, you've done well for yourself past week, and I'm looking a bit pale, I think. We're getting towards the winter, and I'm not been away.
Yeah, I've outdone you on that end. Yeah. I've been to Corfu and Greece, so that was really nice. Coming back to the cold in the UK, it's a little bit chillier. But how's things? You were at the racing in Lincoln?
Yeah, so in Lincoln yesterday we had a soapbox race, the first ever in the city. So doing a bit of reporting on that was a bit of a change of pace from the football, something a bit different, more of sort of like a community feel, a nice sort of like feel good day out, rather than going to the football and sort of like an intense 90 minutes. So yeah, it was something a bit different, but yeah, good fun.
Good. And both yourself and I are just getting ready, doing odd little bits, getting ready for going back to university, final year. So it's all kicking off a little bit, but we've still got time to discuss. We're making time out of our very busy schedules to discuss.
It feels weird recording this in an afternoon. We usually record sort of late evening to sort of push pull the curtain back a bit. And we're recording this in sort of middle of the day, just after Bargain Hunt, which I've been watching over dinner. It feels sort of weird to be recording it in the daylight more than anything.
Yeah, there's actually light coming out that window now, yeah. But yeah, we've managed to squeeze in another episode. Hopefully you'd have heard Sam and Callum's preview episode during the midweek, looking ahead to the Saturday fixtures that have just passed. Now we're here to review those ones, and we've got quite a few good matches in the mix this time round. We'll start a big one, two of the big hitters perhaps in the league, Bolton against Huddersfield. I'm fair to say, Jamie, I'm not quite sure the final score is what we were expecting.
I don't think anyone would have predicted that. I did see a little bit on Twitter or X that was sort of a picture of sort of the ground just before people coming in. It was what can ruin such a lovely day for football is the bright sunshine, lovely day, and then the tweet underneath it was 4-0 to Huddersfield. So that was what would ruin the day for Bolton and for Ian Evatt, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute or two. But sort of the game itself, a real sort of domination, wasn't it, in terms of the stats? 16 shots to 5 shots on target to 1. I mean, scoring 4 goals from 5 shots on target is pretty good going. The 2.44 the XG against 0.13 for Bolton. I mean, it tells you pretty much everything, doesn't it? I mean, the fourth goal in particular, a clip that did the rounds with really poor goalkeeping, trying to play it out from the back in a really unconvincing fashion, I think would be the politically correct way of saying that. And then Huddersfield obviously put it in the back of the net after being handed the ball back. But yeah, a real shocker up to third, I think now, Huddersfield and Bolton down in the relegation zone. I don't think anyone would have predicted that 5-6 weeks ago at the start of the season.
No, I agree. Particularly that goal that you mentioned there. It's just really poor. So many players around that 18-yard area, really, and it's just one of those. You just have to hoof it.
Just launch,
get rid of the ball.
I know what's always said. It's sort of because you teams play out from the back, and you have to stick to that idea, that philosophy when you're playing that style of football. But there comes a point where there's 4 attackers running at you. You just got to get rid of it. And I think that sort of decision making is the problem, rather than it being a style of play issue. It's just simple decision making. If you're under pressure, you're being charged down, sometimes the best is just to get it gone and clear the danger. But obviously they didn't do that and handed it straight to Huddersfield and didn't make any mistake. I mean, they looked pretty good. Obviously, we'll talk more about Bolton because of that being the story really with Ian Evatt and the sort of the big questions around him now. But Huddersfield deserve a bit of credit to put 4 past Bolton away from home as well. Not an easy place to go. And they've gone there and they've battered them really, going across the Pennines, and so they're looking at a real threat. Huddersfield as well as Bolton looking not so much of a threat.
Yeah, indeed. As you said, we'll pick up on Bolton and in particular Ian Evatt shortly. But just a word for the Terriers. Josh Caroma with 2 of the goals, 1 from the penalty spot. Ben Wiles and Anthony Evans. After a little bit of a slow start, they're coming into form a little bit and coming into to good clutch at a good time.
Yeah, they're hitting form at sort of the right time. I know that's something we'll cover a little bit with Leyton Orient in terms of. We talked a little bit about it last week in terms of the international break. Sometimes a team can kick on. It's a good time to have a break after a poor start, a bit of a reset, and maybe Huddersfield are in that bit of a mode. I mean, they've not started badly at all, but this is a real statement performance. They've started well, been quite impressive, a couple of good results, and this one is really the one that sets out the marker. They're going to be there or thereabouts in the automatics come the end of the season if they can sort of churn out performances like this. And I mean, that's the big result of the weekend, isn't it? And there's a reason we're starting with it, unless something miraculous happens tonight between Birmingham and Wrexham in sort of the Super Bowl of League One. If something miraculous happens there, maybe it'll blow it out the water a little bit. But I'd be surprised if a 4-0 Bolton hammering can be topped this weekend at least.
Yeah, certainly. And finally, Huddersfield, before we cover Bolton, I think the moment that they scored the first goal is crucial, the timing of that. Josh Caroma got his first in the 44th minute after a Callum Marshall delivery. And that's a perfect time to score. Right before half-time, you can go into the break with a little bit of momentum, a little bit to cheer for, particularly those travelling away fans. And then you've got that fighting spirit a little bit more coming back out in that second half, and emphatically going on to score 3 more goals. But the key moment for me was that goal just before half-time. It probably a sucker punch for Bolton, but for Huddersfield, massive boost, I think, going into that break. As for Bolton, not looking good at the moment. There's been plenty of rumours about Ian Evatt's current position. I know he's just done an interview in the last hour or so at the time of recording, and he, at the minute, is sort of blaming the whole culture around the club, saying that they can't seem to shift the negativity. And he dates all the way back to the Wembley losses. They said that there's been a sort of negative atmosphere around the club since then. Do you think it's that deep, Jamie, or do you think it's something else?
I think it has to be. It's not an overnight problem. It's not suddenly arrived that Bolton are off the boil and struggling, and there's a real sort of sense of doom and gloom around the place. It's something that comes, builds over time and sort of progresses. And I mean, 2 playoff failures is always going to add that, as of course getting so close last year, and they had a job done on them in that final against Oldham, against Oxford, I beg your pardon. Oldham, well, that's a blast from the past.
Not League One anymore.
Very much not. But yeah, they had a bit of a job done on them by Oxford in that playoff final, and they've sort of come out of that, and it takes a lot to bring a team who've gone through something like that and bring them back to being where they were. And I mean, he's not really managed that, at least yet. I mean, nicking a stat from Twitter from FTFC Nappers on Twitter, in 2024 in the league, 12 wins, 10 draws, 9 defeats. And if that's not mid-table form, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Bolton's a team who were looking for automatics after a few seasons of being knocking on the door and it not getting opened for them. And you can't be looking at that and going, that's a team that's going to be there or thereabouts this season, because they're just on that form going to be absolutely nowhere near where they want to be. And I mean, Ian Evatt's been there since 2020. He's near enough 250 games, 51% win rate for them. He's done a good job there. I picked out a quote from something that Bolton put out after the game, and I'll just read that out. We've had a lot of good times. This is for me and Evatt, but this is the toughest. That was the toughest to view, even from the start of the League Two campaign I've never stood here and felt like I do now. So it feels a little bit like he's hit not a rock bottom, but he himself is feeling that this is as bad as it can get. And you can't help but feeling that if he can survive this, then he's almost Teflon, isn't he? He's going to at least see through the season. And I think that was something I said during one of our previous shows, that it could be Ian Evatt's last shot at promotion with Bolton. I mean, if he fails again at promotion, and it's hard to call a team finishing third, fourth a failure, but that's what it has been. A team that's been looking to get up for years, and it's been a failure for them, especially last season. And if they don't do it again this season, I can't see him staying on. But if he even makes it that far at the minute is the question, isn't it? And 4 points from 5 games, you don't want to make rash decisions. But we'll talk in a minute about a new manager coming in, and already an immediate bounce there. That it can happen where a new manager comes in and it turns your fortunes around. And I'm sure there's people at Bolton thinking about that.
Yeah, only one win of the season so far for Bolton. It's not looking great for them at the moment. 21st in the league standing as things go. Yeah, it's a real make or break, I think, at the minute for Bolton and for Ian Evatt, really. He's come out, as I said in the press conference, saying he's not leaving, he's committed, but some of the things they're saying have got to cause concern. I've got to be like, why is he mentioning those? I think in conference a couple of days ago, I think it was before the game, possibly after, he mentioned about what he's done for the club, the successes that he has brought to the club, and he's thinking he's almost doing that to prove a point.
On the defensive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that is certainly one to watch. Yeah, interesting at Bolton. Interesting as well that the Stoke manager has left. So potential rumours.
I've got to put you on the spot though, Seb. Is he going to get the sack?
I think he's going to leave and go to Stoke.
Do you think Ian Evatt's going to go to Stoke? Huh?
Yep. Although, I mean, what do I know? I said...
well, we found that out last week, didn't we, when we were on about Steve Bruce?
Yeah,
he's not getting sacked. He's not getting sacked.
Yeah. Which one's go to Blackpool? That's not happening. But I genuinely think, he's either going to get sacked or he's going to leave. He's going to save himself and go to Stoke. I can see a real opportunity there for Ian Evatt in terms of his managerial career. Really, he's been, as you said, been at Bolton since 2020, 4 years. He's done them some really good. To be fair, in that time. Before that, he was at Barrow. Impressed there. For him, I think the next step up is the Championship, and I think at Stoke it's a really good. There's a really good group of players there, young, fresh, willing, sort of will be willing to learn under Ian Evatt. But I do think he's either going to get sacked or leave in the next month.
I think he'll get past Christmas. To be honest, I think it'd be too early to sack him in this season because they put a lot of trust into him. He's been there 4 years. He's got a lot of sort of like cash in the bank, if you like, if that's the sort of analogy, that he's got that credit that he can say, well, I've done this for you, and they've got to go, yeah, okay, we'll give you a chance to turn it around, because he does deserve a chance to turn it around. And I mean, he's a good manager. That it's easy to forget that in sort of times like this, how good a job he has done there overall, sort of bringing a club. A proper sleeping giant, sort of turning them around a little bit and pushing them in the right direction. They're knocking on the door of the Championship, and that is ultimately the next step. Last season was that chance, wasn't it? I mean, with the league being how it wasn't as strong as past seasons as this season. That was really the chance, and that was a bit of a sucker blow for them. But the fact that he's kept the job after that tells me that they put a bit of faith in him, that it'll see out till Christmas, and if it doesn't turn around, maybe you look at it then, second half of the season, looking to try and salvage something.
Yes, a bit interesting to see how that one plays out. We'll move towards a team who have recently themselves made a managerial change, and that's Blackpool bringing in Steve Evans. I'm sure no one had that on their bingo list at the start of the season, but nevertheless, Steve Bruce now in charge at Blackpool, and in his first game, managed his first win as Blackpool boss. A bit of dramatic fashion, though, Jamie.
What a manager! What everybody. When he came in, everyone knew he was going to do this, didn't they? Not a single person doubted Steve Bruce and doubted that he could get a win in his first game. Yeah. James Husband, 94th minute winner, quite the way to do it, wasn't it? Ex-Rovers, got to get that in there. Exeter scored in the 88th minute. Edward Francis surely thought he'd got his team a point. And then deep into stoppage time, Husband, who used to be a left back, I think left-sided of a free, mainly these days at centre half, coming up with the goods. Not the likeliest of goal scorers, but
no, not at all.
And that's what you want. The first league win of the season, and to get it in that sort of fashion, it's such a boost for Blackpool and for Steve Bruce coming in, because he can really sort of galvanise the place, not only the squad, but the fan base as well, and really get the whole place united. 50-50 on possession, but Blackpool having sort of more of the attacking, more of the chances, and they've come good with that, obviously, getting a win that looked pretty deserved when you look at stats and a bit of highlights and that sort of thing. But more importantly, if it was deserved or not deserved, it is a win, and that's all that matters at the end of the day. You get that first win under your belt, first game, and it'll create a bit of buzz, bit of energy, and they can really push on from this, I think, and get themselves on a good run.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that will do himself and the club a world of good in terms of their confidence. I know it's his first game and he's got his first win, but how do you think he'll actually get on? Once that sort of honeymoon period has settled a little bit, how do you think he'll fare?
I think it's tricky because you just don't know him. He's been out of the game for a little bit, hasn't he? And he's come back in, and you just don't know how people are going to fare when they're like that, when they've gone out and are coming back after a year or two out. And there's a positive to that, obviously, because he's fresh. He's retired and unretired, and he's come back a little bit fresh, new eyes maybe after so long in the game. He's been around the place twice over, hasn't he? Around the EFL and the Premier League, obviously. But I think these first few games will sort of define how it's going to go. They've got Sheffield Wednesday in the Cup in midweek, which is a bit of a free hit, isn't it? But then it's the 4 league games after that bring my attention. They've got Charlton away, which is obviously a really difficult game, and then Burton and Lincoln back-to-back at home before a trip to Mansfield. And obviously Charlton probably look the most difficult team on paper there, but Burton aren't an easy team to beat. They're a bit of a bogey team just in general, if that makes sense. They're a team that you just never really know how you're going to fare against them. They can pop up with a result. They put a couple of goals past Rotherham, as we'll get to towards the end of the show. And then Lincoln are doing quite well away from home. They're unbeaten in 10 or 15 games, something like that, I think. And then Mansfield have started quite well in the league with Nigel Clough this season, and they're a difficult team to beat on their own patch. So it's not an easy start to life for him. No. It's a good first win. But I think those first 5 games, including the one he's already had, that'll sort of set the mood music of where it's going to go. Because if you can get a few draws, a win out of those, try and only lose one of them perhaps, then they're pointing in the right direction and you're thinking this could really sort of kick on. But if they're coming out of that with a couple of losses, 2 or 3 defeats out of those 4 games, suddenly it's totally the opposite way around, and it's what are we doing? It's Steve Bruce in 2024. What's happening? So it could. I'm reserving judgment, and I'm going to give you 4 games, and after that Mansfield game, I'll tell you exactly what I think.
No, I get that. I get that. But I do also think, because it is Steve Bruce, because of his experience, I genuinely can see it quite being one of these that's like weirdly successful, in that like it's not meant to fit, but it does fit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sort of that on paper it shouldn't work, but I can see it actually working between Steve Bruce and Blackpool, really. That's obviously got off to a great start, a flyer, home win against Exeter. But I genuinely, in terms of like the longevity of it, I can genuinely see it working, albeit slightly sort of a little bit of an odd pairing. But I can see it work, definitely, for sure. I can see it work. Just the experience he brings and the experiences he's had elsewhere. Yeah.
I can go with it. It's all right.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you kind
Firmly
of
on
hope
the fence over here.
The Blackpool fans. Well, yeah. I'm glad. I hope the Blackpool fans get aboard of that as well. Finally, before we take out our little halftime break, first victory of the season for Leyton Orient. Who knew we'd be saying that? Last week it was looking a little bit desperate. There's sort of rumours perhaps about the manager going, but he's still in, and they managed to secure first 3 points of the season, Jamie.
Well, it's Monday afternoon, and I think I can still hear Sam celebrating that one. I mean, it's a really good win, this one. Away at Reading, a clean sheet. They got that first half goal with Charlie Kelman, and then reading sort of the stats and impressions of the game, it's backs against the wall stuff. But doesn't matter how it comes. It can come sort of use a slightly unsavoury, I guess you'd say. The old Neil Warnock saying it can be a knob end in the 90th minute. It doesn't matter as long as you win. That old documentary did with Sheffield United. But that's what it takes, isn't it? It's just, if you win a game, it can just turn your season around. And I know we talked about it in our sort of slimmed down review last week with a few games to talk about. We talked a little bit instead about Leyton Orient. Maybe they'll be able to kick on after the international break like they did last season. And maybe they're on their way to doing that once again, a bit of a repeat of history there. Because they've come out of the international break, had that week on the training ground with Richie Wellens, and they've kicked on, got a really good 3 points away from home. And it's their first clean sheet in the league since March.
Wow.
They got a clean sheet against Millwall in the Cup back in August, but their first one in the league since March. They've got Brentford as well in midweek, which in the Cup, which could be, it's a bit of excitement, isn't it? You get this nice win on the weekend, and then you go into full of confidence going into against a Premier League side in the Cup. And even if you lose, you can, if you put a good counter for yourself, it really sort of galvanises the place. And I think it's all looking, suddenly out of nowhere, it's looking up for Leyton Orient.
Yeah, it's incredible how one result can change the mindset and the way supporters look at a club. But yeah, plenty to be positive about, and certainly that international break will have done them some good, being on the training pitch, and to beat a good side away from home like Reading are. It's sort of kudos to Richie Wellens and his staff for getting that result. Really, pretty surprising, but it's finally there. They finally got the 3 points on the board. Do you think then that's it for their troubles, or do you think they'll just go on a bit of a blinder?
I think you've got to always temper it a little bit. They've got the chance to do it, and I'll be honest, I think they will sort of kick on a bit now. They've got Stockport away after the Cup game in midweek, which, as much as Stockport have been pretty good, obviously, so far this season, and took a little bit by surprise most people in the division, that you're going to look at that as a winnable game, coming at a bit of momentum, and you want anybody who's got a little bit of frailty, and they've obviously drew to Crawley, Stockport in their last game. So you're looking at that and going, potentially we can go there, back-to-back wins in the league, and suddenly it's on its head. And then you've got Peterborough, who themselves haven't exactly been as good as you would expect so far this season. So it's all pointing in the direction that it could do. And I'm going to put faith in Richie Wellens, put faith in his young side, and say there's no reason why they can't turn this win into a good run of form. I'm not saying they're going to win game after game after game, but I'm saying they could pick up points in that stretch and really sort of point themselves in the right direction.
That famous phrase: they're going to win some, they're going to lose some, they're going to draw some. That's
great analysis.
You're welcome. We're going to take a little halftime break before returning to chat about how Barnsley, Lincoln, and the rest of the teams in the division got on. We'll see you shortly after this. Hello and welcome back to the League One Lowdown from the Deck Podcast Network with myself, Seb Jones, and Jamie Johnson. As ever, we've chatted about sort of the headline results from the last round of fixtures in League One. Now to chat about some of the teams a little bit closer to home. regrettably, we're going to have to start with Barnsley away at Stevenage, and I think a lot of the players were just on cloud nine thinking about that away draw to Old Trafford coming up on Tuesday in the League Cup. They suffered a 3-0 defeat away at Stevenage. 2 goals from Elliot List and Carl Piagiani header from a set piece.
Shock.
What was interesting for me, well, shock, I know, yeah. Interesting for me was the double substitution at half-time from Barnsley. Darrell Clark brought off Barry Cotter, who has actually been one of our better players the past couple of weeks, and brought off Donovan Pines, who got elbowed in the first half, went down for treatment, had stitches, I think, on the sideline, and then continued on, but wasn't fit enough to continue in that second half. And is now out with concussion. So there's a little bit of question mark over that. But at 0-0, there's surely, what do you reckon, Jim? There's surely not that much of a demand to change stuff, No, I don't think...
He obviously just wasn't happy. I mean, I have to admit I was at an FA Cup game on Saturday, so I haven't seen this one sort of in detail. But managers don't make double substitutions, especially at half-time, if they're not happy. I mean, later on in the game, yeah, that makes sense. You're taking people off half an hour to go, 20 minutes to go, whatever. But at half-time, if you're making a double change, it's saying you're not happy with what was happening in the first half. But obviously, all the goals came in the second half. I mean, Elliot List, the substitute on his own, he came on in the 52nd minute, scored 2 minutes later. Piagiani scored 5 minutes after that. So it was a real sort of cluster of goals, those two in 5 or 6 minutes, and then he got his second at List right at the end. And that, to me, you don't want to put the blame on Darrell Clark, but the second half seemed to be where the issues were. Obviously, that's where the goals came from. And you're looking at, so you get those flow charts of momentum and that sort of thing, and you don't put much stock into those because they're a little bit fanciful anyway. But they show, and the stats show, and sort of the goals and the flow of the game, it all points to the fact that Stevenage did their damage in the second half, and that was after a managerial choice at half-time. And it's hard to put it all on Darrell Clark. He's doing a good job in a reset season, as I keep saying with Barnsley. And Stevenage is a really, really difficult place to go. Everyone struggles at Stevenage, especially away from home. They're really dogged, hard to break down, very good aerially, strong, physical. They're a team you don't want to play. And when they're putting a couple of goals past you in bunches like that, then they're really difficult to break down.
Yeah, especially now under Alex Ravel, as you said, not the easy place at all. Especially when you do have the likes of Carl Piagiani at the back, a solid, tough defender, and who can, as we've seen, can bob up in the other side of the pitch as well, grab himself a goal. So, yeah, I think there's been lots of positivity around Barnsley the past couple of weeks, and I think this has put a slight dampener, perhaps a little bit of a reality check, really. As I mentioned, we have Manchester United away in the Carabao Cup coming up shortly. Good victories. Bristol Rovers at home, Lincoln away before that as well. So sort of real signs of picking up momentum, and then we lose, on the road away from home. So it's a little bit of a reality check, really. Have you seen the pink Barnsley shirt, Jamie?
Yeah, it's absolutely hideous.
So that was our first. Go on.
No, I was going to say I saw someone, because the Stevenage kit is sort of half red, half white, and so sorry to whoever it was on Twitter, but someone has said the pink Barnsley kit is what happens when you put the Stevenage kit in the wash. The red and the white merge, and you get the pink strip. A bit of an eyesore.
Yeah, well, that was our first time wearing the pink kit, and hopefully we never wear it again. Bad luck charm.
But before we move on to Lincoln, with Stevenage, they've had 5 games, obviously. A couple of wins, a couple of losses, and a draw. But in that, I think the most important bit is they've scored 5 goals, which isn't great, but conceded 3. And that is the bit making the difference for Stevenage. I think that illustrates really simply what I'm sort of saying with terms of how hard they are to break down, is that they're a really difficult team to put goals past. I mean, Lincoln beat them 1-0 last week, and that was a penalty fairly towards the end of the game after a real sort of dull affair. And that's really what you're getting from Stevenage. You're not playing amazing football against Stevenage because they just stop you doing that.
Yeah.
No one enjoys watching Stevenage games because it's true though, isn't it? Apart from Stevenage fans, obviously, when they beat Barnsley 3-0. But that's not everyone has to play pretty football or whatever that even means. Winning football is all that matters, and it works for Stevenage. So all credit to them. A really good result.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Clean sheet on the back of that as well. We moved towards Lincoln, and they faced another trip on the road to face Peterborough United. And who's on the score sheet again? None other than Ben House. Again, Jamie.
I know. Ben House he scored in the first half. It's the first time they've scored against Peterborough in 5 meetings. A bit of a bogey sign. I don't want to lift sort of the curtain back too much. I was chatting to someone yesterday at the soapbox race I was talking about, and he'd seen Jez Jaws, the director of football, a few days before, and he was sort of asked, not in a piece to camera sort of thing, but sort of how are you feeling about sort of the game against Peterborough, and he was joking but dreading it because they never score against Peterborough, but they have now. And Ben House, it was a really nice goal as well, unbelievably well worked, and I think Michael Scubala called it one of the best goals, if not the best goal during his spell at the club so far. I mean, it was really well worked, proper team goal. A good game as well. And Lincoln, if you go into Peterborough, they took 1,600 sold out away end, and they've gone there. And you on paper before the game, if you're walking into the ground, the person scanning your ticket, they say, "Would you take a point today?" Everyone on the way in saying yes, and then at the end of the game, they've got a point and they're going, but it probably should have been free because they played really well. And it's a funny one. You get those games like that, don't you, sometimes, where you're happy with the result, but you're also going, but it could have been more, and it's probably 2 points dropped as much as it is a really good point gained. So that's really my summary. Poku scored a lovely goal. I mentioned obviously Ben House's good goal, but Poku got the equaliser in the second half, and that was a really lovely strike, cutting on his left and curled it into the far corner. The only, I guess, negative you take from the game, George Wickens, the summer signing goalkeeper, went off with what could be a concussion. So hopefully he's all right by the weekend. But Gcock, who's another summer signing, they signed 3 goalkeepers during the summer, came on with about 15-20 minutes to go and saw the game out well. And it shows a bit of squad depth that perhaps Lincoln haven't had in previous seasons, that they can, even with the goalkeeper situation, replace the goalkeeper with someone who's just as good. Would probably be how you'd say, and that's really important in terms of Lincoln pushing towards the playoffs, which they're hoping to do. All things considered, though, I'd sum it up as a good point on the road against Peterborough.
Yeah, and so far for Lincoln, it's 10 points from 5 games. That's not bad at all. I know last season had a particularly strong season, but in terms of that, there was some quite significant changes over the summer at Lincoln, sitting in 5th position currently, actually above the bigger teams, I guess, of the division in Birmingham and Barnsley. That's not a bad start at all for Michael Scubala's side. Yeah,
if you told me they were going to be 5th after 5 games, I'd told you was an idiot. But they've managed it. I mean, I was. I'm not going to say negative, but not exactly optimistic about them at the start of the season. Obviously, they did so well at the back end of last season. That 16-game unbeaten run was absolutely remarkable, and they got themselves on the edge of the playoffs. And this season, lost obviously Sorensen and Taylor returning from loan and Jensen in net, and they were losing really key elements of that side. Tyler Walker out injured again in pre-season, and they were losing a lot. But they've replaced it well, and they've started the season on the front foot. I think I saw a stat that they were the lowest ranked 24th for possession, but chances they're up in the top half they were the fifth in the table. So that tells you everything you need to know. Guess a bit what we're saying about Stevenage. It doesn't matter how you play football; the result is all that matters.
Yeah,
And
that's
Lincoln,
true. Yeah,
so far, it's so good for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as for Peterborough, Poker with the goal, how important will he be for them this season?
I mean, he's a really good player, isn't he? I think he's sort of the last of that bunch, that generation, if you like, at Peterborough. They sort of bring them in to recycle them on a couple of years later. His class, your sort of your Edwards and your Burrows and your Johnson Clark Harris, your Mason Clark. He's sort of the last remaining player of that sort of set. And he's really important. It's important they kept him around. I think he's classy, really classy. And yeah, really good goal from him, as I mentioned. And I think he'll be doing that all season, really popping up with important goals, getting his team points that they wouldn't otherwise get, and doing it in really stylish fashion.
Yes, hopefully so. And as for the rest of the results, we had 2 12:30 games on Saturday. So it finished Mansfield Town 2, Cambridge 1. Mansfield continuing to impress. 2 goals from Lee Gregory there, starting the season well at Northampton Town. And also, a big part of Northampton Town versus Wycombe Wanderers. That finished 2-1 to Wycombe. The other 3 o'clock games, Bristol Rovers 0, Wigan 4, Crawley Town 1, Stockport 1, 2 apiece between Rotherham and Burton. What an entertaining game that was. And then Shrewsbury 0 and Charlton 1. So Charlton currently lead the table joint with Wrexham and Birmingham, who play as of recording this evening. Quick predictions for that one, Jamie. I know Sam and Callum particularly predicted quite a wild prediction for that one. But what do you reckon? Both the score and sort of, I don't know, player that's going to stand out.
It's a difficult one. I think this is the first week I've not put Alfie May in my EFL fantasy team, but I do think they're gonna they'll see it through. I'll go for 2-1 to Birmingham. Tom Brady to win the American Derby. But yeah, so I'm going to go for Birmingham. I don't know about you, but I think it should be a pretty entertaining game. All things sort of aside of the pomp and ceremony of it and the Hollywood, and you got Tom Brady, obviously, all that aside, as a game of football, the 90 minutes, it should be really entertaining. 2 really top class sides, obviously, great players on both sides. You've got Stansfield and Alpha May up front for one of the teams. You know it's going to be an entertaining game at the very least. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. And 2-1, it would be my prediction. Seb, don't know about you.
I'm going to be a bit boring and go 2 apiece. I think both sides have got good quality, and I think both sides will score. Yeah,
it's one of those games that scream goals, so it's probably going to end 0-0. But
watch it now.
You look at it and go, that game sort of just has goals oozing out of it, and that's the one for me. I think it's going to be well worth a watch.
Absolutely, and it does say something as well that the game between those sides is the only game on Monday Night Football. So clearly, the TV companies know what they're doing by putting that game on then. Clever. I think that's about it. One little question, Jamie, which we've not spoke about before. I know in the past couple of weeks we've had the Barclays men trending on Twitter. Who's your favourite Barclays men from League One?
Oh, from League One.
From League One.
Sort of like current day, sort of like who in this league is a Barclays man? Is that what we're going for?
Yeah. Let's go with that. Yeah.
I mean, we mentioned Poker. He's got sort of Barclaysman energy, hasn't he? He's like, if he was back in the day in like a Swansea team, or like that, the old Wigan side with Roberto Martinez, he'd fit himself into one of those teams. You caught me by surprise there. I wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting that at all.
I can give him. Well, I can give you mine. Mine would be Conor Hurahan.
Oh, yeah, okay. You're more sort of literal, yeah.
So, well, I know he's there now, but thinking about his first spell at the club back in the day, what he did in 2016, what he did for the club then, and he just score bangers, and he was a proper leader, influential figure, and he was always he's gonna always have a good game. So he were my Barclays man of League One back in the day.
Fantastic. Well, if anyone's got some of those, stick them in the comments on YouTube or on our Twitter, League One, the number one lowdown. Be interesting to see. We've gone different routes there. I've gone to sort of a player who fits the sort of the vibe of a Barclaysman, whereas you've gone for an actual Barclaysman in terms of. So the Hoverham was about the place back in the day, wasn't he? So yeah, that's an interesting question. I like that. I was hoping I could have got some bit more prepared for that one. It was a bit by surprise at the end of the podcast.
Right, thank you. Cheers, Jamie. I think that's about it for this episode. Remember to give us a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcast, or however you are listening. And if you're watching on YouTube, do give us a like and subscribe and comment down below your Barclaysman of League One. You know, myself and Sam have got slightly different options for that one. But that is it. Sam and Callum will be back later this week to preview next weekend's action later in the week. But from myself and Jamie here, we'll see you this time next week for another review episode of League One on the Deck, League One Lowdown. We'll see you soon.